Luxana Crownguard is a magic-born human who uses light magic. Ever since she was a small child, Lux had always been able to manipulate light magic to some capacity, such as making her hands glow, but this small amount of magic was easy to hide. Once when they were children, Lux and her brother Garen were playing with toy soldiers. Lux became upset when she was losing the game and lost control of her powers, shooting light from her fingertips and temporarily blinding Garen. Later, their mother would tell Garen that it was just a game and not real. Garen was so disturbed by this event that he eventually blocked out the memory, forgetting what his sister was capable of. Lux first discovered the true potential of her abilities while riding home one night. She was attacked by a pack of wolves, and in a desperate attempt to protect herself, magical light beamed from her, protecting her from the beasts. Since magic use is strictly prohibited in Demacia, Lux knows that she must keep her abilities a secret or risk being sent to jail or exiled from her homeland. She's also afraid of shaming her family, the Crown Guards, whose duty throughout history has been to protect the Demacian kings. At a young age, her brother Garen decided to continue his family's tradition, so he joined the military, leaving Lux to handle the responsibilities back home. Perhaps inspired by her uncle, who was a ranger knight of the Demacian military, Lux would often daydream of venturing out into the world to go on adventures and help those in need. It was this uncle who would go on to warn Lux and Garen of the rogue mages and the eventual end of peacetime. And unfortunately, as if proclaiming a self-fulfilling prophecy, this same uncle would fall in battle against none other than a rogue magic user. This event confirmed to Garen that all magic users were dangerous, and further pushed him to join the military to protect Demacia from these mages. Around 6 years after joining the military, Garen returned home, noticing something different about Lux. He had a sneaking suspicion that she had gained magical powers, but the pain of his uncle's death led Garen to suppress these thoughts. In her youth, Lux would sometimes have difficulties concealing her magic. One day, it had gotten so bad that she had to run out of her classroom and into the surrounding woods, where she eventually found herself in front of the enormous statue of Galeo. This statue was very familiar to Lux, since her family would visit this location regularly. Since magic is forbidden in Demacia, the city uses a material called petricite, which absorbs magic and negates its effects. Lux recalls a legend which states that if the statue of Galeo absorbs enough magic, that it would actually come to life. Lux imagines the statue judging her for not being able to contain her abilities, and she shouts at Galeo to relieve some of her stress, feeling immediately embarrassed and ashamed at her outburst. But then, she starts to hear some strange sounds coming from the top of the statue. Lux assumes that it's just her imagination, but then suddenly, she sees Galeo's stone eyes beginning to shift and gaze directly upon her. Obviously, this is an extremely scary situation for a teenage girl, so she runs away as fast as possible. When Lux finally arrives home, her mother, Agatha, confronts her about leaving school. Since Agatha is the only person who knows about Lux's abilities, Lux confides in her mother and tells her that she felt like she was going to lose control of her magic and that she was afraid she might hurt someone. Agatha suggests that she knows someone who can help Lux with her problem, and that she'll make an appointment for Lux to meet this person the next morning. Lux is afraid that this mysterious person is actually an annuller, who will take her powers away in an excruciating process. Lux recalls stories of annullers using bizarre instruments to silence magic users, and then take them away from the city to relocate them to the slums on the outskirts of civilization. In order to avoid this fate, Lux returns to Galeo's statue, asking it to cure her of her magical sickness. Just being near Lux allows Galeo to absorb enough of her magic that he fully awakens, becomes animated, and begins attempting to speak with Lux. Again, Lux is fearful of this mountainous, conscious statue, and as she begins to run away, Galeo feels his life energy begin to fade. In order to remain alive, he chases after Lux so that he can continue to gain energy from her magic. As she attempts to escape from this colossus, Lux shoots a light beam into Galeo's leg, hoping that this will slow down his pursuit. To her surprise, the attack only gives Galeo more energy, and he scoops Lux up into his enormous palm. Galeo tells Lux that he was made to crush mages, but that Lux is the first mage that he actually likes. In order to escape Galeo, Lux pretends that she's going to sleep, and asks Galeo to turn away from her for her privacy. Galeo agrees, and when enough time has passed, Lux sneaks away further into the woods. Alone in the forest, Lux begins to hear animal noises, and decides to use a small amount of magic to light her path. Suddenly, 3 men ambush her and begin to restrain her. They identify themselves as annullers, and since they saw Lux using her magic, they assume that she has escaped the slums where the other magic users are exiled. Lux begins to explain, but they don't listen, and instead tie her up. During the struggle, Galeo awakens and makes his way through the forest, picking up the 3 men and nearly smashing them in between his hands. Lux begs Galeo to spare the men, and disappointedly, Galeo lets the men free. As Galio and Lux spend some time together, Galio realizes that Lux's magic is fading, and he comes to the conclusion that the petricite that he is made out of is absorbing her powers. Galio explains that Lux's gift is more important than his life, and that they should remain separated so that Lux can continue to use her magical abilities. Years later, Lux journeys north to Fossbarrow to pay respects at her great-grandfather's tomb. Great-grandfather Fossian had slain a demon here, but had also become mortally wounded in the process. It is for his sacrifice that the location of Fossbarrow is named. As Lux moves through the town, she senses a darkness. Lux makes her way to the town's main hall and is greeted by an Illuminator healer named Mistress Purnell. Mistress Purnell informs Lux that one of the magistrate's sons has gone missing, and that townsfolk are spreading rumors that the boy was kidnapped by a mage for some dark purpose. While in Fossbarrow, Lux meets up with her brother Garen, and later they come across a mob of angry townsfolk led by Magistrate Giselle, who appear to be beating and berating a local villager. As they approach the scene, they learn that the man killed his entire family as well as 3 of his neighbors. The beaten and bloodied villager says that they weren't his family and neighbors when he killed them, that they were monstrous beings and that he was fighting for his life. In her vengeful state, Magistrate Giselle sentences this villager to death on the spot. Since Garen is now a member of the Dauntless Vanguard and serves the magistrate, he complies with this command, putting the villager to death with one swing of his sword. From the dead villager's decapitated head, a dark demon quickly emerges and then dissipates. Suddenly, the other townsfolk from the mob begin to faint, and from their bodies arise Noxian shades. Lux tells Garen that she has a plan and rides off, letting Garen and the other members of the Dauntless Vanguard deal with these specters. Riding past these newfound enemies, Lux makes her way to her great-grandfather's tomb, where she happens to find Magistrate Giselle's missing son, Luca. Unfortunately, Luca has been possessed by the very demon that Lux's great-grandfather was thought to have slain. The demon reveals that Luca is also a mage, and that the demon has been feeding off of the boy's fears of being found out. During his devious monologue, Lux comes up with a plan to both save Luca and defeat the demon. She infuses her dagger with light magic and just barely cuts Luca's cheek, transferring the light magic directly into the demon through Luca. Luckily, this pays off, as Luca appears to be free from the demonic grasp. However, the demon is nowhere to be found. But for the day, they had won. In order to help other young magic users like Luca, Lux would eventually become a volunteer of the Illuminators, a religious organization which specializes in helping the less fortunate. While tending to her new duties in the great city of Demacia, Lux witnesses a mage-born woman running from authorities. Garen eventually apprehends the sorceress, and Lux begins to worry that others might find out about her powers as well. She learns from Garen that a spellbook was confiscated from the home of the renegade mage, and Lux hatches a plan to use her standing as a member of the Crown Guard family to enter the arcane registry and try to find a confiscated book that might help her learn to control her abilities better. After hours of searching, Lux is unable to find any relevant reading material, so she decides to take a break and wander around the other buildings surrounding the courtyard. She eventually stumbles upon a holding facility where unconvicted mages await their trials. Again, using her Crown Guard privilege, she ventures deeper into this Azkaban-like building. She comes across a special room where the mass murderer Silas Dredgeborn is being held. Silas immediately recognizes that Lux is a magic user as well, and he tells Lux that if she returns to him, he will teach her how to control her powers. In exchange for these lessons, Lux brings Silas a new book so that he can learn about the world outside of his prison. Eventually, Silas requests a specific book, one that was written by the founder of Petricite. Lux uses her abilities to break into the vault that safeguards the text and brings it directly to Silas. Silas quickly reads through the writings, and as he is handing them back to Lux, he brushes up against her arm, using his own ability to absorb the powers of other magic users. Lux's high-ranking aunt, Tiana Crownguard, discovers that Lux has been visiting the criminal, and in order to prevent her from having further communications, she orders Silas to be put to death. The next day, Lux protests during Silas's execution, saying that it's unfair that he should be put to death just for being a mageborn. Lux tells Silas that she's sorry, and she leans down to hug him. During this moment, Silas absorbs even more of Lux's powers, and he uses these new abilities to break free from his chains and murders everyone in sight. Silas breaks out all of the other mages that are being held captive in the dungeons, and together they escape through Demacia's underground sewage system. The next day, while conducting a search of one of these escaped mages' homes, Lux gains the trust of 2 young magic users, who tell her where to find the others. Lux makes her way to the safe house where the escaped prisoners are hiding. In order to ensure their safety, Lux leads them through the underground sewer system, trailing far behind Silas. They eventually make it to a dead end, where Silas has caused the sewer ceiling to collapse, blocking others from following him. This allows Garen to catch up with Lux, and he threatens to turn her in along with all of the other magic users that she is helping to escape. Lux uses her abilities to break through the rubble to continue leading the other mages to safety. This is the first and only time that Lux has intentionally used her abilities in front of Garen. He can now no longer hide the fact that he knows that Lux is a magic user. In his internal struggle between justice and loyalty, Garen chooses to remain loyal to his sister, and allows Lux to escape to safety beyond the city's walls. After these events, Lux and Garen are seen amassing an army somewhere in the Freljord, north of Demacia. Silas, along with his horde of sorcerers, ambushes them, and an intense battle breaks out. It is here that we see Lux at her most powerful, as she abruptly summons Galio to the battlefield in order to stop Silas in his tracks. As of this video's recording, this is the last known whereabouts of Lux, so perhaps this is where we will encounter her in the upcoming Riot MMO. Maybe we'll aid her and Garen in the battle against Silas and his rogue mage army, or perhaps we'll even be able to choose to take Silas's side in the fight. What do you think will happen? Let me know in the comments down below. And hey, if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe, as I will continue to upload more League of Legends and Riot MMO lore videos in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.